Unmanned aerial vehicles have a very important place in the history of war, right? So, what was the reason for this? Of course, the Ukrainian armed forces have been using these unmanned aerial vehicles for about 2 years, achieving very important successes on the front line. Unmanned aerial vehicles were sometimes seen on the main front line of the Ukrainian and Russian war, sometimes in the skies over Moscow, the capital of the Russian Federation. Some drone strikes have even targeted Russian government buildings. Hello, the Pioneer viewers. As the Pioneer team, we are here again to bring you the developments regarding the Russia-Ukraine war. As you know, there are attacks carried out by the Russian army on the Bakhmut front line. These attacks don't bring any gains to the Russian army. However, the Ukrainian armed forces stop these attacks of the Russian army with the attacks it carries out. The attacks that took place in the past days clearly reveals both the developments of the Ukrainian army in drone technology and the situation of the Russian army. So, what are the details of these attacks? Let's examine it together. As the Pioneer team, we continue to convey the Russia-Ukraine war to you. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications so as not to miss our daily map reports and reports on the agenda. You can also help us reach more people by commenting on our videos. I read all your comments. Let's start if you're ready. The Pioneer reports. Previously, we have conveyed to you a very remarkable information about Russian tanks. Military experts had claimed that the military vehicles in use by the Russian army looked quite successful in military ceremonies, but during the war, they were not as powerful in the military ceremonies. This issue has once again emerged. The Russian tank destroyed on the Bakhmut front line revealed that the Ukrainian army has shown a very important success. One of the most powerful and most successful tanks of the Russian army is the T-72B3M tank. It was this tank that was destroyed recently. Moreover, the unmanned aerial vehicles of the Ukrainian armed forces was destroyed by the Ukraine itself. As we have already mentioned, the Ukrainian armed forces have developed themselves quite well. The Ukrainian armed forces, which are used Turkish-made Bayraktar unmanned aerial vehicles at the beginning of the war, are now using their own unmanned aerial vehicles. The unmanned aerial vehicles developed by the Ukraine carried out a very successful operation. As we mentioned, there is a pressure on the Ukrainian army from the Russian army. In order to repel Ukrainian troops, the Russian army must maintain its firepower. Of course, tanks provide a great advantage in terms of firepower. Since the defense line established by the Ukrainian army on the dominant hills of Klishchivka cannot be broken, the Russian army is trying to expel the Ukrainian army from these dominant hills by using its tanks in the region. However, the drones of the Ukrainian army disturbed this plan of the Russian tanks. As we mentioned, the unmanned aerial vehicles named Wild Hornet, produced by the Achilles company, which is in use by the Ukrainian army, was on the stage. Yuri Fedorenko, commander of the Achilles drone company in the Ukraine's 92nd Assault Brigade, shared the moments of the destruction of the Russian army's tanks on social media. In these images in question, it is seen that a Wild Hornet drone used by the Ukrainian armed forces first opened fire on the Russian army's T-72B3M model tank and then hit the tank. Of course, the video is cut off with the heat of the drone, but however, the camera of the unmanned aerial vehicle becomes active again and is clearly seen that the tank is destroyed. Fedorenko used the following statements in the destruction images has shared. Achilles destroyed an enemy T-72B3 tank worth $3.5 million. Ukraine's multi-purpose Wild Hornet kamikaze drones are responsible for this attack. This is not the first failure of the Ukrainian military drones. As you may recall, earlier in late September, Ukraine's digital transformation minister Mikhailo Fedorov announced that the Russian T-72 and T-80 tanks, as well as Russian howitzers, were destroyed during drone strikes under Russian equipment by the Achilles strike company. These successes of the Ukrainian army with the drones are wearing the Russian army down, both financially and in terms of firepower. At the beginning of the war, the successes achieved by the Ukrainian army using drones were underestimated by the Russians, and it was claimed that these successes were achieved by chance. However, the successes which were not achieved on a one-off basis once again showed that the Russian administration and the Russian army were wrong. The Russian army, on the other hand, has still not been able to achieve the desired breakthrough in the unmanned aerial vehicles. So much so that the majority of the Russian army's drone fleet still consists of Iranian-made drones. We see that the Achilles company is particularly active on the Bakhmut front line. Fedorenko, who recently gave an interview to a Ukrainian television channel, claimed that about 80% of the Ukrainian army's equipment belonging to the Russian army along the Bakhmut front line was destroyed by howitzer fire and drone attacks. Fedorenko also used the following statements in his statements. A very small percentage of the enemy's equipment is capable of returning. These troops are fighting hard to seize positions and territory captured by the Russian troops. The success of the Ukrainian army is critical. The video and the success achieved by the Achilles company were also marveled by the Russian sources. The intensity of the fighting on the Bakhmut front line will increase day by day. In parallel, both the losses of the firepower and the loss of military personnel of the Russian army will increase. Although Russia strives to continue the war, these losses will necessarily be recoverable on one day. I would like to share with you the details of the very interesting video published recently. A very remarkable image broadcast by the Russian soldier from the front line became an agenda on social media. In the video in question, the Russian soldier was shooting a video consisting of tips on how to survive in war. However, the Russian soldier may not have applied the tips in this video well, because the Russian soldier lost his life in the attack organized by the Ukrainian army before finishing the video. The video in question was published by the Ukrainian journalists. The Russian soldier was using the following statements in the video. We are leaving the mission. We have been conducting a combat mission for several days. Now we are returning home. This is the weather in this country. Cold and muddy. Today is the 1st December, the first day of winter. We are at war. As my first company commander said when I was still a cadet at the famous General V.F. Margalov-Rizian Guards Higher Airborne Twice Red Banner Order of Sovereign Command School, in order to survive in the war, the video cut off at this point. First, the Russian soldiers' screams were heard. Then the sound of this labored breathing. Ukrainian journalists also commented on the video, referring to the military training base in Ryazan, where the Russian soldier was trained. The secrets of the survival of the occupying paratroopers on the Ukrainian soil remains unsolved, although in fact the unspoken recipe was simple: stay in Ryazan and everything will not be fatal. What do you think? Do you think the Ukrainian army will be able to repel Russian attacks with drones? What are your thoughts on the Russian soldiers' survival tips? Let me know in the comments. I read and care about all your comments.